Let's do it. So today we are talking about Google Ads budgeting strategy. And by that, we just mean the thought you should have behind studying and figuring out what kind of budgets you want to put behind your Google Ads campaigns. There's a lot of people out there who are like, I can run $5 a day ads and get you lots and lots of money back. And there's a lot of people out there who are like, you got to spend thousands and thousands of dollars in order to make money. So we're going to talk about ignoring both sides of that equation and thinking a little bit more strategically behind your ads budget. So let's talk first about why is it important, Andy?
Definitely. So this is definitely probably the biggest question that we get, especially from new customers or new clients as we're working with them, people who haven't run ads in the past. Always, they're typically coming to us, asking us as experts, how much should I spend? What's the budget? And the short answer is, really it's up to you. And there's a lot of factors. We'll talk about some of those factors. It's very different by business. So we can help guide in a lot of ways, but ultimately you've got to come up with a number that's, really first and foremost that you're comfortable with and that you can spend. But some of the things that we think about or some of the constraints around this is everything that we're doing in Google Ads is really focused on automated bidding. So we're not, gone are the days where we're picking a very individual cost per click and bidding that specific amount on this particular search term. It's much more now saying, hey, here's the general themes that I'm willing to run ads on. In Google, I want you to spend my money in the most cost-effective way, whether that's a little bit higher bids for certain people, lower bids for certain people. So with that in mind, a lot of what we think about in terms of budgets is how do we get enough data back into the model so that it has a chance to learn and really give it a chance to be successful, right? So, if you, in the extreme, if you said, hey, I only want to run, $50 worth of ads, chances are you're not going to get enough data back because with $50 of ads, depending on what types of keywords you're bidding against, you may really only get, 10, 20, 50 clicks out of that. And if you're only getting 10, 20, or 50 clicks, it's really tough to tell, how often are people purchasing when they get to the site, because a lot of it's just chance at that point. You just don't have enough data to really make any assumptions or to learn much from. So we need our budgets to be high enough that we can get enough data to come back in. But at the same time, we also don't want to just spend a ton of money and risk losing all that money right up front. So we also don't want to set a budget where we're spending $10,000 in the first week and just let's throw a bunch of money at it. And then ultimately you find out that, hey, the strategy wasn't quite right. You didn't have enough time to adjust anything. Now, all of a sudden you're out a big sum of money. And you don't really have much to show for it because you didn't find success. So it's kind of figuring out a happy medium between those 2 points and finding a place where you can spend enough that you're getting enough data back into the model and the model is able to learn and figure out if your campaigns are really going to be successful. Well, at the same time, allowing yourself to make some mistakes in the beginning and figure out what is going to work without wasting a bunch of money or spending all your money before you really know what's working.
Yeah, I think that's great foundation for the importance of it, the why of it. Do you have any suggestions around the ways to set the budget once you have your why? What are the next steps?
Definitely. There's a lot of factors that go into it, different ways to think about it. As I already mentioned, the first thing is how much can you afford to spend? So by all means, if your entire marketing budget is, $200 a month, probably going to be challenging to really get into Google Ads there. But again, I can't tell you to spend $1,000 in the first week if you just don't have the money in your marketing budget or you don't have the money to put up front. So you've really got to think about what are you comfortable with? What can you afford to spend? And we think of a learning phase in the beginning of any campaign. So during that initial period, even if we're going to be successful in the long run, there's probably going to be some choppy performance for a week or 2 weeks as we're kind of getting everything up and running and the model is learning. So it's important just to make sure that you can put that money up and you're not going to, as you're going through the learning phase, run out of money. With that in mind, I really do typically like to start small and kind of grow. So wherever you go, another kind of big component of what I like to think about is let's start with maybe half of what you initially threw out. And then once we find some success there, we'll go ahead and start scaling it up and spending more as we have good results coming in. And then the last thing to think through, and this gets a little more technical, is thinking through how much data that you need to come back in. So we try to get, you'll find all different numbers for this, but I try to think like 30 to 50 data points to really start to feel like you're figuring out something about this model. So it would be 30 to 50 purchases before you're really able to make some decisions on your campaign. So what you can do is throw in some assumptions based around what your target ROAS or your target return on ad spend is and what your average order value is. So, if your average order value is $100 and you're hoping that your ads can return a 2x or a 3x ROAS, you would expect that, a 2x ROAS would mean that for every dollar that you put in, you get $2 in revenue back out from the ads. So if your average order value is $100, you know that in the long run, once everything gets through the learning phase, you should be saying that for every $50 you put in, you should be getting $100 out, essentially. So one purchase for every $50 you put in, if it's a 2x ROAS. But yeah, so the idea would be, in that case, using that really simple example, if we're looking for 30 to 50 purchases in the first, say 2-3 weeks or in the first month to make sure that we have enough data flowing back into the model, well, now we can kind of start to back out. We know every purchase may cost us about $50 to get it because the $100 average order value, we're hoping for a 2x return. So that looks like we're going to be spending about $50 per purchase. We need about 30 purchases. So, maybe that comes out to about $1,500 that we're going to spend in the first month to really figure out, do we have enough to put into this campaign to really get a feel for whether it's going to be successful or not. So that tells you that your budgets are probably going to be a little bit higher if it's a higher average order value, or your AOV, your average order value is higher. It's probably going to take a little bit more ad spend to get those purchases. And also if, you're a little bit lower margin, so you're requiring a higher ROAS or a higher return on ad spend, it's also probably going to be a little bit, higher spend level to kind of get yourself up to that point.
Awesome. So we've got the why, we've got the formulas, we've got it all figured out.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips, tricks? How can we maximize a budget?
So one of the things I just mentioned, let's not try to spend too much right away and go overboard. A lot of times people think, I'm going to run search ads and performance max and shopping, and I want to run this display targeting this group of people. I always say start simple. So if we just did some analysis and figured out what the kind of starting budget should be for a single campaign, think to yourself, if I'm going to run 5 campaigns, you probably just multiplied that starting budget by 5. So why don't you start out with the thing that's probably most likely to be successful? So let's go ahead and figure out what campaign type probably is going to be best for your particular business, for your particular target, for your particular outcome that you're looking for. And let's just start there and see if we can find success there. And then we can pivot to other campaign types and try different things. But don't try to do too much at once. Even if you've got all these great ideas of what you will do in the future, let's just start with one and figure out if we can make that profitable and really conserve our budget before we go ahead and start to scale and spend beyond that. And then the other big thing is what we like to call micro conversions. So I just explained how if you're just looking for purchases and you need 30 to 50 in the first month, that can get a little expensive. So depending on where your budget is, and this gets back to, what are you comfortable spending? Sometimes we'll look at things called micro conversions, which are those events that happen along the purchase path before you get to a purchase. So in e-commerce specifically, we'll tend to focus on add to cart or begin checkout. So those things are happening more frequently than the actual completed purchase is happening. And we can put some value to those. The big thing there, you just got to make sure that you're putting a small enough value that you're not training the model to go out and look for only people who are going to add a bunch of stuff to their cart and never purchase. You want to make sure that those purchase events are still the most important and the highest value events. So the model is getting that data back in, and that's how the model is being trained. But yeah, you can start to look at it and say, hey, if it's going to take me a month and it's going to take me $1,500 in ad spend before I get my first 30 to 50 purchases, well, maybe I don't have that money. Maybe I'm not ready to put that money up before I, figure out if this is going to be successful. So let's go ahead and throw on some add to cart events and say, okay, well, maybe I can get 10 add to cart events or say 20 add to cart events and 10 purchases. And that's how I can make up my 30 events to kind of get some data back into the model. Now, that's not always the best way to do it because, like I just mentioned, the add to cart event can sometimes be a little bit different type of person, a little bit different type of outcome than a purchase. It's not always exactly one-to-one that the same type of people who add items to cart will eventually make a purchase. So in the long run, once you do have enough data and you've scaled up to a big enough spend, you probably want to remove those micro conversions. But just as you're starting out and the model really doesn't have any data and you're just trying to get that data up, why not throw in some of those micro conversions? And that'll give you a good way to just feed a little bit more data back into the model without spending too much.
I love it. I think that's especially helpful to be thinking about the types of intent behind each micro conversion, because how many people do we know that do window shopping and add to cart and then never come back for it until they get the emails later or forget about it entirely?
Exactly. Yeah. That surprised me the first time I remember, kind of digging into Google Ads data the first time. And, I can't really imagine doing that myself. So I, didn't really think that would be such a big thing. And oftentimes you'll see like a 5-to-1 drop off, 10-to-1 drop off. We see really big kind of swings in the kind of average amount of add to carts to completed purchases. And I guess it is a really common behavior that a lot of people do is, throw some items in their cart and then, and it's sometimes it's on purpose. Sometimes you just get distracted and jump into something else and don't ultimately complete the purchase. So we do see that quite a bit. Yeah.
And likely why abandoned cart flows are pretty lucrative and helpful for businesses.
Definitely.
So awesome. Well, thank you for going through this. I feel like just like a really perfect foundational strategy for getting your Google Ads started. I think you gave us lots and lots of little tips and tricks, and we'll have the formulas up for the non-math people like myself.
Well, I'm walking around in the background here.
Yeah, he was clearly not a math person himself, so he
go lay down.
So, want to transfer over to what's good?
Yeah. Why don't you go first?
Okay. So Bao and I, he probably walked away because he knows I'm going to wrangle him in to be part of my what's good. But Bao and I have been practicing, much to Brian's disappointment. All of our dog children have never been good at catch. Usually hits them in the face or they miss it totally. So we've been practicing his catch. And so I thought I would try and get him to do some catch for what's good and see if he could get it. So come here, Bao.
Oh, this is wonderful.
Come here. Look. He has to be like extra coaxed for it. He's such a diva. Come here. You want to come over here? Can you sit right there? Yeah. Can you see him? Oh, okay. Here we go. Ready? Ready? You want it? Yay! Did you see it?
Great job, Bob.
Another one? Ready, Bob? See it?
Less so on that one.
So we've been practicing. He's pretty good about other stuff. He can do lots of little tips and tricks. We've been practicing. That's our what's good is he's getting better at it. But as you can see, it takes you got to really hype him up for it. He's not going to move out of a nap for just, one or two little tiny treats. Unfortunately, he's the diva of the house. So that's our what's good.
The practice you're putting in and sharing that with us here.
Yeah.
That's good. On my side, kind of a personal for PPC Pitbulls. What's good for me today is the official first day that Lindsey is joining us as a full-time PPC Pitbull. So yeah, we've been loving your support as a contractor up to this point, and just really excited to have you on board as a. I guess it probably doesn't change a ton about our day-to-day, but great to have you on as an employee.
Yeah, I'm really excited to join fully as an employee. I think that it says a lot about an agency that I'm willing to give up some of that contractor freedom in order to be a part of something that's so great. So I really believe in what PPC Pitbulls does, and the clients are just amazing. So I really love helping them out.
Awesome. We're so happy to have you on board. We'll have to come up with a good nickname. I don't know if you're officially a pit bull now or something like that.
Percy's probably side-eyeing me right now. She's like, she hasn't earned it.
Definitely. Well, awesome. So, I think we've got a long weekend coming up here. I hope you enjoy. And I guess we'll probably be releasing this after the long weekend. So hopefully everyone enjoyed their long weekend. And we'll talk again soon in a couple weeks.
Yeah, stay safe, everybody. Get some naps in like that. And we'll see y'all next time.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.